Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with Kansas City jazz saxophonist and educator, the great Dan Thomas. We caught up with him in Kansas City in the middle of May 2020 during the COVID-19 quarantine to discuss how he knew jazz was going to be silent, what he's been doing, and that hope for the future, along with the reality of things. Enjoy.
How are you, man?
I'm okay. Hanging in there.
Oh, man.
Bunkered down. Bunkered down in the bunker.
Oh, what crazy times, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty unreal.
Unreal. You're talking about something that, there's no generation that can say, oh, yeah, I remember going through that.
Yeah. No, it's a true challenge, It will change life as we know it.
Well, as if you needed any more change. You had enough things probably going on when this came up. So, the one thing before we kind of get into this new COVID-19 jazz world and what you're up to is that, I always ask people, how healthy is jazz? And with just one musician, the amount of festivals, traveling, dates, everything that's been canceled for one musician is staggering.
Oh, there's no question. It certainly hit my personal economy, an awful lot. In a variety of ways too. There's a trickle down effect, So, I've lost several gigs in Europe and Canada, and then national, local, regional festivals and club dates. That kind of happens like a month at a time. So end of April, May's gone. I'm waiting this month for June to be gone. And then there's a trickle down effect too. Personal families. I obviously teaching is a big part of what I do.
And that's the thing about it. It's staggering. But if we go back, just so we can kind of weave together a narrative of this, I would say probably mid-March would have been about the time that things started happening. In your life, when did you start knowing that we were getting ready to go into this jazz is silent mode?
Honestly, late February was where, I was catching wind,
Wow.
So just, again, hearing from folks over in Europe and, watching what was going on, talking with my family, back home in Canada about, what response was going to be and what they were talking about there. We were, as a nation, denying the magnitude of this for a while, right? So we had blinders on. So yeah, early on, we played March 5th maybe. I think that might have been my last gig. It was March 5th, and we were wrestling with whether or not to take it. And it's quite nerve-wracking, to be honest, to be out and about. Amongst a large population of folks, So that was it. And then, after that, everything just started to, snowball with cancellations.
It's weird because the last show I saw was Bill Frisell on the 3rd at the Nelson, which was amazing. And then I had done some interviews with Deborah Brown for the Maxine Gordon visit. They were going to do a show on the 13th, and when I went on the 12th to see Maxine talk about Sophisticated Giant, I was asking Deborah, are you guys going to have the show tomorrow night? She was like, oh, yeah, of course. And that was probably already late in the game, but I think that was after the national address said, hey, look, everything's going to get shut down here soon. So I knew that was going to be one of the last things that I was going to see publicly. And then, of course, on the 13th, they officially announced that someone had COVID-19 on Johnston County's campus. So, of course, everything was blocked. But it's amazing, too, talking to musicians. Some even knew back in January after they had gone to, China. I remember seeing an article in, late November or early December, and Beijing was empty, and it sent a chill up my spine. I was like, wait, hold on. Because they were talking about how there was no smog and there was no one on the streets, and I was sitting here thinking, wait, hold on a second now. This is one of the most densely populated cities on the planet. There's no one walking around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I have to say, it's interesting, how to actually get control is, uniform decision making, and we as a nation, celebrate our freedom, but in a country like that, they can say you're staying home, that's it,
right?
And shut it down,
Yeah.
In which case, you at least eliminate the infection from, or virus rather, from traveling, from person to person to person. Folks are hunkered down. I mean, we're hunkered down. We're doing our part. I care about you, Joe, and I certainly care about all my neighbors and whatever. So, we're locked in at the house, and we, our essential moves are once every 4 weeks. We're doing once every 4 weeks, and it's, we're going stir crazy, but at least we're blessed to live in a nice home and, a nice neighborhood to walk in and get a little bit of exercise and that sort of thing, and enough spaces for everybody to have their own zone. I've got 2 kids who are, doing homeschooling basically now, and online learning with their schools, and my wife's teaching full time, and so she's doing that online. So I'm teaching online, doing Zoom lessons and otherwise. So it's it's a challenge, but if everybody does that, we get better control of this.
Without a doubt. Well, what are you doing creatively to satiate kind of that creative part of you during this time?
Yeah, so I used the term yesterday that I'm preparing to be lucky. So I'm reverse engineering the definition of luck, which is preparation means opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So I had a project called Bird Life that I've been working on with Brian Ward and Dave Valdez, and we've been writing and arranging for that. We actually would have had our first gigs in March. We've been getting together for rehearsals and otherwise, so we're still kind of rethinking and working on that project, just evaluating what that might look like as we come out of this, and I certainly hope we do. So lots of writing and arranging. Also working on Charlie Parker's birthday for the Follies, and so again arranging and composing and organizing Bird's birthday, and that's been pretty awesome to just reflect on a young dude from Canada moves to the States, ends up in Kansas City, gets to play with Jay McShann, and now celebrating Bird's 100th birthday is pretty amazing. So that's fantastic. Just kind of, thinking about what that might look like and how many folks I can get involved in this project, which is quite a large group at this point. And then other things, lots and lots of cooking. I'm ready to go out to a restaurant. Our family has sophisticated tastes, so every meal is a big production, and so definitely ready for some restaurant stuff. But again, lots of cooking and stepping up that game. And then home projects. I've gone through 4 motorcycles, and finished my restoration on my 72 Triumph. So that's coming off the list, and I'm out of bikes to do. So we got a 49 Ford that will be delivered here to start working on. It was actually my wife's great grandfather bought it off the showroom floor. So that's coming down here, and I just got to have something to do that engages both right and left brain. So by and large, I mean, that's it. Staying creative and active. I'm practicing still. It's a very stimulating time. The one thing that I miss, jazz is communal. So I miss being around musicians and being around people, and the social aspect of the art form, because it's a social art form. That's the part I miss. The creativity and that sort of thing exists, throughout my day to day anyway. But I miss being challenged by other folks, both in conversation and like musical conversation, and then conversation on the break.
I guess that's the modern day dilemma with all of this. There's been a lot of people that have been able to do live streaming and those kinds of things, but I think the reverberating notion from everybody is that this is a communicative group activity of getting together, so that's probably more than anything else. And we really haven't even gone into one of the things that I find about this that is the most supportive is that people buy the music instead of streaming it. Do you think maybe this might be a clarion call to, places that distribute music to be a little bit more equitable with the musician?
Oh man, I mean, I wish that were the case, but I mean, again, from a product standpoint, if you will, right? Like consumer-driven product standpoint, I used to make great money on my CDs, right? Like great money. And then it moved to iTunes selling, right? So, but they sell the whole album. So that was even more money because I wasn't actually having to, turn out physical product. It was, that way. Then as soon as they started selling single tracks, you kind of knew what was selling, and it diminished. And then when we went to streaming, it diminished again. And now, it's like the listenership is way up, but I don't know that we're going to get to a place where people are all of a sudden retroactively going to say, we need to be more fair. People are stealing stuff all the time, like online. It's just out there. Everything's out there. So we have access to so much information, online or otherwise. It's real challenging, man. I don't know what the answer is here. I don't think we're going to retroactively go back and people are all of a sudden going to start seeing more money from their digital sales and otherwise. I just don't see it. I mean, it's already out. It's kind of like, I won't go there. I'll say it. Canadians often talk that, the gun control issue in America, right? It's already out there.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be very difficult to walk. It's difficult to walk that back.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Very difficult to walk it back. So
I
think here.
100%. Yeah. Well, the thing that I find interesting with all of this, since this has really ramped up since mid-March, and watching how this has kind of evolved over time, or in certain aspects it devolved, I hear so much about how, we've lauded all the essential workers, from teachers to healthcare professionals to sanitary workers and all these people. And then you'll see memes here and there that talk about the artists. But really, at the end of the day, the one thing that's going to save everybody's sanity, ultimately and truly, is going to be music, visual arts, TV, and film.
I agree. I 100% agree. That's my hope, too.
Yeah, well, and you take that notion and really say, who are the essential people out here? Because we're living without baseball and basketball and hockey and all that. We're making it, and I mean, we're watching reruns and doing this, that, and the other. But on a daily basis, if you didn't have music or something to indulge in on a TV, we'd be in trouble.
Yeah, we're very blessed to be living in the time that we're living in too. The distractions that we have from just how severe this is, serious, is we're very, very blessed as a society, I mean, without this technology, it would be just really challenging. We'd be going stir crazy, and we'd probably be seeing a lot of suicide. I mean, I think, so people are able to stay sane. I think that's a good way to put it, Joe.
Yeah. Well, what the one thing that I've thought a lot about too, and I'm sure everybody has. I don't know, because I'm not a musician, if I can delve even deep enough to understand the economic ramifications of what this is going to mean for people that really depend on this in their lives. I mean, I've heard stories and I can imagine, but what do you think the recovery landscape for a town that really has been going through a renaissance for a while and has had a massive list of live gigs every single night, what do you think that's going to look like for Kansas City?
Oh, man. I mean, I don't have an answer for that, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't think anybody has an answer. We don't know. I mean, if they're doing a 10-10-10 rule in Kansas City, Missouri, the sheer economics of that, if I'm scheduled to play the Blue Room in early June, right? Well, if my band's on stage and they've got a door greeter, and they've got somebody running sound and a bartender, you can maybe have 3 people in the room. So do those 3 people have to pay $500 a piece to come in?
Yeah.
Does it become an elitist sort of thing? How do you navigate that, you know? I just don't know. And I'm concerned for some of the venues in town that just serve alcohol, have no state appropriation, have no not-for-profit status, don't have a restaurant, so they can't do to-go orders. So you know what clubs I'm talking about. I'm concerned because I just don't know how you can stay open, you know, in that environment. So I think, you know, hopefully the landlords and you know, city, you know, will give some sort of relief for those businesses so that we can see those open up again. There's successful models out there, but how long is it going to take for people to feel comfortable? Would you be comfortable if we're open tomorrow and there's a jazz club? Would you be comfortable coming in to a full crowd tomorrow?
Oh yeah, no one's going to do that.
You did that. So and you're a jazz lover.
Yeah,
I see you all about town, man. So it's like, you're a jazz lover, and I'll confess, I can't. I mean, I have an autoimmune deficiency, so you know, I'm quite concerned, you know, just about, you know, getting the infection. And again, I don't know or the virus rather. I don't know what, you know, where we're going to be. I just don't. You know, and we can all speculate. I'd rather, again, just kind of be prepared. I think we're preparing for opportunities that don't exist yet. Things are going to look drastically different across the board. You know, my July is international stuff. I mean, our flight's going to open. Am I going to be comfortable getting on a plane? I don't know, you know. So, yeah, trying times. I'm optimistic. People need music. Music. I mean, the doomsday of jazz going down has been that's a history story, right? And how many different incarnations have we heard? It's not going to get down. We as artists do not do this music for its revenue stream, right? I mean, you know, if I want to make some good money, I open a pizza joint. Even in a pandemic, pizza joints, you know, are still delivering pizza. You know?
Yeah. So you're totally right.
Know, yeah. So I just think that the music's going to survive. Artists are going to continue to do it. What that looks like, you know, again, I don't know, but I have to be ready to play, and I hope all the other musicians are, you know, feeling the same way. And I want to play for people. I want to play in front of people, you know, and again have that communal exchange with musicians live on stage. Like, you know, recording remotely is a I've done a couple of those things now, and it's just so different because you're basically playing with a backing track, which in and of itself is a unique challenge. But you know, you're playing with a backing track. You know, there's not a lot of it's a one-way interaction, I guess is what I'm saying. You know, and I want that live exchange, like good conversation.
Without a doubt, it's vital. And I guess that's the thing to me that's very reassuring about jazz, and it's been historically relevant about jazz, is that it's always been an art form that people aren't getting into for the money, and through all the adversity, there's always been innovation. I mean, the practitioners of bebop didn't create it because there was commercial interest. They didn't have a label saying, you gotta come up with a new way because we need to make money and this, that, and the other. They came up with it because they felt it within themselves. That was what they felt like they wanted to do. So I think that's the thing, you know, that's reassuring about the jazz idiom, is that's what you guys do anyways, and you're going to do it no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's a deep love, you know. It's a passion, you know, and I think we're fortunate to know our passion, to know what we love, you know. That's a blessing too. It's challenging times, you know. I feel very fortunate to, you know, have been, you know, taught quite a bit about business, if you will, So to be able to be prepared for something like this where, again, the economy stalls. I mean, I was told feast or famine early on, right? As a jazz musician, it's feast or famine. So I've always been preparing for famine, and this is the time. This is the time that I've been preparing for, and so I feel fortunate, that my children have some options for food and otherwise. You know what I'm saying? It's a blessed time.
Yeah. The one thing that strikes me too, and it seems rhetorical, but it took me a while to really absorb and wrap my head around this. I've done so many interviews with jazz musicians, and I hear so much about the improv nature, the one time, no matter how much you play a song, it's always going to be different. There's always these realizations that I'll see with just going out and seeing how life works. You can't Bill Murray Groundhog Day this. It's the ultimate version of improv when you just look at how life works. It mimics jazz. And if there's anything right now that we're going through, it's called ultimate improv. I mean, this is improv in its highest version. And this is what you guys do all the time. It almost seems like this, for artists, this is the moment that is more jazz than anything else as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'll have to give that one some thought. I like it.
Yeah. The other thing, too, that I wanted to kind of throw out there, I guess a personal thing, I was cutting something, and I accidentally took a razor blade through my thumb, and around late March, I had to go to the hospital. I'm like, oh, man, I never go to the hospital. Had to go to the ER. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and we're getting in the car, and once I figured out what was going on and getting to that point, I just told my wife, I said, if there's ever a time where it's going to be safe for me to go anywhere, it's going to be now. I walk in, put a mask on, take my temperature, sanitize everything, and I'm back there in the ER doc. I'm getting ready to get stitched up. I just looked at him and said, just tell me what's going on with this. Just give me your thoughts on this thing and what's going on. And he said, look, we don't have to worry about this, guys like us. But it's the older people that we have to worry about. And when you think about jazz audiences in Kansas City, what's the average population when you really go to a show, say like the Folly that's going to happen in August?
It depends on the music that you're playing. It depends on the type of jazz and who is associated with the ensemble. So I'm with you. The audience of the Folly, we're probably of similar age, right? So probably our age and older, based on ticket prices, right? I mean, it's that economy, has impacted who's attending what. I think it's the ticket costs, right? So I mean, those audiences are at risk, and it's concerning. We've been throwing around some ideas, as possible options for what that show might look like, in the event, right? In the event that, I mean, how many seats can they have at the 10% rule, too, right?
Yeah. So, well, yeah, and that's the thing, but this is the thing. We're all just like waiting for this tsunami of ambiguity to go away. I mean, we're all just like waiting here, like what's going to happen. And if we look at the timeline, the soft open of May 15th. I mean, there's been some places May 11th that have opened, May 15th. We don't know how this is going to actually materialize, and I think we're going to have a better notion once things start opening up, and we can see, what. So once we see what's going on, we're going to have a better idea of what we can and can't do. So I think that's another thing to keep in mind, too. Maybe it won't be as bad. I've heard from people that have worked in the hospital system in Kansas City that it's actually, we avoided a lot of potential disasters. So that's something to keep in mind, too.
Oh, we sure have. We sure have. However, I mean, we have the advantage of some states opening before others. We have the advantage of looking at what happened in Sweden, where they didn't close, and you watch the percentile spikes, right? So, I think we can look at Georgia and some of those places that have opened, before we have, and learn lessons from them, and Well, what's the analogy? You know, when one area opens, it's kind of like having a peeing section in a swimming pool. It's a real challenge, man. I mean, I would love for us to have kind of done it, and this is, you know, again, not to be political or otherwise, but, you know, I've watched what New Zealand did, and it's pretty impressive. I've got a bud over there who's a jazz musician, and they were locked down and, you know, held in place, and like it turned out pretty well for them. It's obviously a much smaller community and otherwise, but like, you know, it's worked out pretty well for them. So we've seen successful things. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. I know that our country operates differently. You know, we have a very different operating system. But you know, I think I'm concerned. I will tell you the thing that could bite us in the butt is a second wave, a third wave, and we keep riding these waves. Right? Open up, close. Open up, close. Oh, that didn't work. Close. You know, as opposed to waiting. And the flip side of that is, I know some folks that just really need to get back to work. I mean, you know, the way our banks are dealing with mortgages for some folks, I mean, you know, we'll relax it for, what did they say, 3 months, but then you got to pay it in full. How? If you have no job. I mean, so there's a lot of layers here. I'm sympathetic to them all, and frankly, you know, I would prefer to just kind of listen to the scientists, follow that, you know, guidance, and go. I was impressed with Quentin Lucas he said he's going to open, but he was also asked, is he going to go out and mingle and move around, and he's absolutely not. He's not comfortable going out. He's going to do his part and stay home, but he understands some people need to get back to work. I get it, you know. No right or wrong here. I'm glad I'm not the one being paid to make the decisions. You know?
Yeah, without a doubt. You know, I will tell you one thing. I've talked to a lot of people around the world, and the people that sound the most relaxed are like the Europeans, like, you know, people in Paris and Germany, and, you know, even in Spain and Norway. It's like, you know, they're just up front. They're like, look, we hopped on this. We've been effective. We've been swift. We have done everything they told us to do, and we're going to start, you know, seeing some daylight, which is positive. So, you know, the one thing that I want to ask is this. You know, we've all been away for a while, and we're all going to get back. Now, we don't know when that's going to be, but it will happen. So my question to you is this. What revelations do you hope we get both as musician and audience member when this actually ends and we can all get together again?
Oh, man. Deep love and appreciation for being together and, you know, listening to or making music. You know, this is not a day job where you carry your lunchbox to work, you know, and go in and, you know, clock in, clock out. We're very blessed when we have the opportunity to do it. When we are invited to come perform, even when there's a paycheck, right? We're invited to perform. It's a real blessing. And I hope that when we come out of it, we are all the more appreciative for the blessing of what that is. Amen.
Dan, thank you for taking some time out, man. I appreciate it. And, you know, I hope I can make it to the Folly or something here in the foreseeable future, because I know I'm missing it. Yeah, we'll just, all we can do is hold on to the hope, man.
Right on. Right on. Well, thanks for doing what you do, man. Okay, my friend. Have a great day.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Canada, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Dan for his time, honesty, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends, and support all of the arts.
Neon Jazz.